Hey guys, it's Holly. Thanks for being here and watching this. Today I'm joined by Matt Tresidder. So, Matt, you and I first met in November of 2020.
Yes. Yep.
We met at a coffee shop, which I think was supposed to be about an hour meeting, maybe. I don't know. Turned into 3 hours of us nerding out about leadership and organizational change and building companies and scaling up. And here we are in July of 2021. And now you're my boss.
I know, isn't that crazy? And I don't know if you remember this, but the reason I was in Houston was visiting customers. And I just
Mhm.
happened to be in the area and I wanted to grab a casual coffee. But my master plan was I needed someone to come and solve all our marketing problems. So I think I won.
You know, if I've learned anything about you, it's that you always have a master plan. There's
That's
like
true.
always a game of chess happening in Matt Tresidder's brain of what pieces you have to move next.
Well,
Yeah.
like one of my life goals and ambitions is to be a really mysterious person. Like I want to be James Bond with this whole other thing, like this other life that I'm living that's like really secret and really mysterious. But unfortunately, I'm the most like non-mysterious and the most like non-subtle person ever. So anytime someone tells me that like I have master plans, it's very invigorating. So thank you.
Yeah, there you go. That's hilarious. Well, you're welcome for that. Okay, so I want to start at the beginning. First, I want to catch people up because a
Yeah.
lot of the people who are subscribed are like, wait, Holly. I mean, even some of my friends are like, I thought you started your own business. I'm like, I know, I did. It's confusing. Even I'm confused. Yeah, so I did. So I started the Ready Network, which is my company. I transitioned away from Vanderbloemen, where I was for almost 9 years, and it was such an amazing journey there. Joined a coaching group in 2020 to kind of figure out like what does Holly Tate want to do? And it was such a great exercise of figuring out like my personal mission statement and values and just unpacking a lot of that, which led me to want to start the Ready Network. And so I did that in November, to which when we met and you were like, hey, join Leadr. And I was like, no, no, no. Why don't you become a client? And so, yeah, I got to work as the interim head of marketing with you and the team for December, January, and February, and
Yeah,
then joined full time in March. And in those
that's
three
right.
months, it was crazy. I feel like I could do a whole nother, I probably should do a whole nother, just, I guess it would be myself talking, me interviewing myself about what I learned in those 90 days, but got to help so many organizations with different marketing
Yeah.
workshops and got to help Sean Lovejoy with his Courage to Lead Live event and just work on some really cool projects. But through that time, really fell in love with the Leadr team. And I was already in love with the mission of developing 1 million leaders and knew that I would learn a lot. So that's really why I joined, was to learn and be able to take this awesome software to the world because it's so needed. But today is not about me, it's about you. So I want to learn. Let's go back. So, would love for you to kind of share your story and what led you
Yeah.
to co-found Leadr. So, start wherever you want in Matt Tresidder's life and bring us up to today.
Well, one thing I want to back up on real quick is I felt like that 90-day was like a 90-day interview process. And they say that you're supposed to like put the best version of yourself and the best version of the company forward in 90 days. So I had, speaking of master plans, I told all of the Leadr staff, like every time you talk to Holly, make sure like you're the happiest person in the world and like tell her how amazing she is and all these encouraging things. And so there was about 30 people involved in my master plan hiring process. So anyway, just I thought I should get that out in the open. This is like confession, you know.
Yeah, this is like a public confession. Yeah, for sure. I wonder when all of that will go away. Let's see.
Hmm. So me, so I joined a startup in New Zealand called PushPay, and I joined as the first salesperson. And Chris, who was my boss at the time, we went through that journey over the course of about 6 years. And when I left, we had about 500 staff, so we grew really fast.
Yeah.
And the journey was a ton of fun, but I needed a break afterwards. So Chris calls me on my break and he says, hey, what do you want to do next? And I said, I have no idea. I said, I want to start something. And we talked about the addictive nature of startups and growth and how once you've done something at scale and when something's on fire and chaotic all the time, you can't do anything else. So I told people I'm ruined for the startup nature of things, but I didn't know what. And he said, well, what are you passionate about? And I said, the only thing that comes to mind is discipleship, is leading and developing others. And specifically in my background was in youth. Like I loved youth discipleship and helping in youth groups and doing one-on-one discipleship. That was like my thing, my jam. And then so Chris and I started talking and figuring out, okay, so how can we package that into technology to make people better leaders? So that was the inception of the whole concept.
It's so crazy. Did he have, like, when he called you, you were like traveling the world, right? Like you and Kaisa traveled the world for 6 months.
Yeah.
And he calls you, did he even have a name for the company, or was it just an idea at the time?
So Chris is the master of master plans. So a year and a half before that conversation, he bought the domain name Leadr.com. And he would tell you that he bought it for me and that he was just getting me to catch up to the vision that he had already had. And so I was just a year and a half behind his vision. So yeah, he'd had a plan to start a company that was passionate about leadership development. He just needed me on the ground to be the one to run and make it happen.
So what made you decide to jump in? Like Chris calls you and is like, hey, here's this crazy idea. I bought this domain a year and a half ago. It's spelled really weird. Everybody's going to be confused.
Yeah, that's true. All of that did happen. So I called one of my mentors. His name's Peter. And I said, hey, I need some advice. I want to get your thoughts on whether you think I should jump in and do this thing. And he said, great. So who is it with? I said, Chris. And I said, and basically what the idea is, and he cut me off and he said, you said Chris, right? I was like, yeah. He said, Chris Heaslip? I said, yeah. He goes, great, you should do it. Like, I haven't even told you what we do. I haven't told you the role. He's like, that doesn't matter. He goes, if my old co-founder called me up and said, hey, do you want to do it again? We're getting the gang back together. We're going to do something special. Do you want to be a part of it? He goes, I wouldn't even ask about the details. I'd just say yes. So he said, when someone like that calls you, you just say yes. And so for me, the details were important and we figured out the details. And one of them was like, how are we going to do it different this time? Because we talk about how we want to do this healthy and we want to come out the other end of this journey even better than we were going in. And I'm not sure if I could say that about myself last time. I left with almost nothing left to give. So when I think back on it, that advice that Peter gave me, just say yes, that was the light bulb moment of, I don't want to miss out on what this could become.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. So you jump in, and at the time, I mean, it was just you and Chris, right?
It was me and Chris and 2 or 3 others. There was 4 or 5 of us sitting around a tiny little conference table in East Seattle.
That's awesome. And then tell us about those first days. I mean, what was it like? Like, did you guys have this master plan of like, this is our product roadmap and this is what we're creating? Or was it just a lot of interviewing different people? What did that look like?
It was a lot of arguments, actually. There was there was a lot. There's a lot of people.
You love arguments, Matt.
I do. It's my love language. I love a good fight. So it was essentially this conference table of 5 people passionate about leadership development and all having their own ideas of how to see that played out. And I wanted to see this way in the product, and I wanted to see it that way, and other people wanted this way. And so it was weeks, if not months, of articulating exactly what we were doing and why. And then at that point, it was how do we get what we call the MVP, the minimum viable product to market. And so we built the simplest, the dirtiest, the skinniest version of the platform. And then we opened it up to beta companies and organizations, mostly churches, and just started calling and said, hey, you want to jump in and try it?
That's amazing. So how long did it take you from having all the arguments to being able to finally sign up the first customer?
Okay. So arguments to first beta customer was probably about 3 to 4 months, somewhere in there. And then arguments to first, I don't even know if arguments is the right word, but let's run with it. Arguments to first paying customer was probably closer to about 18 months, 12 to 18 months, because COVID happened. So we were supposed to launch February or March of 2020. And we just felt like that wasn't the right time to start a business. So we waited a few months.
Yeah. That thing called COVID.
That thing. Yes. I know. Yeah.
So how did that impact the team? Because then, okay, so we're looking at February, March 2020. How many people were on the team then?
So we had probably 8 staff and then probably another 15 contractors. We outsourced the initial version of the product. And so we had around 7 or 8 staff. And it's hard to picture it, but there was so much anticipation heading into launch. We had been working on this thing for upwards of a year. Some people had been in the team for almost 2 years. So we'd been ideating and building and coming out with the narrative and working on the website and all these things for over a year and a half. And then COVID hits, and it's the most deflating feeling, because it's like everything within your control, we did a good job of, and everything within outside of your control is underwriting or undercutting your momentum. And so those few months were really, really challenging. And I don't know if we were close to pulling the ripcord and just ejecting, but certainly I had those thoughts of, wow, we've really picked literally the worst timing to do this. And I think just through our realization, like the convicting nature of how we thought the product could truly help people, we just decided we're going to go for it. And so May 2021 is when we started selling and signed up our first paying customer.
And
2020.
then,
Yeah, 2020.
yeah, I know. I'm like, what year is it? I still think it's 2020. And I'm like, oh,
I do as well.
So then, okay, so May, you signed up your first customer, and then, I mean, we can just fast forward to July. There's a lot to cover in between then and now, but what, we're at 340?
41.
41?
342. Not that awesome. Not that I'm counting.
Not that you're counting. Yeah. Not that we have a Slack channel where we celebrate every new customer we get. So
no, of course not.
I love it. That's incredible. So, because at 12 months, it was 300 customers, around 300, which is just unreal. So, okay, let's just think about over the first year. What are the biggest things that you learned in that first? You also became CEO in that first year, Matt.
I did. There were a few things that happened. Yeah,
just a few. Yeah.
I'm not sure I can recall everything that happened in that 12 months. Okay. First one for sure. And I've had a lot of people remind me of this, and you just get used to it. So you don't think it's as special as it is, but culture determines everything. Culture, the health of the team determines everything else. And so we started, last year, I would say maybe even bigger than signing up our first few customers was us articulating our core values. And we went through a really interesting process for that, actually. We didn't dictate them. So we didn't say, as a leadership team, we've decided these are our values. This is what we have to live by. And if you don't belong here. We said, who are the people that we've hired and how would we describe them? What attributes, what characteristics do they have? And how would we sum those up in a set of values? And so essentially, we described the culture as it was becoming, as opposed to telling it what it needs to become. And so that process was amazing because the staff ended up saying to us what we feel like the values should be. And so that was the first thing, is like defining, identifying, and then instilling our culture. I feel like we've done a really good job of that. I think our team is amazing. And then the second learning for me, I think, especially in light of the conversation about launching in the midst of COVID, is that you can overcome like any obstacle, any impossible, just with sheer will and determination. Like, I don't think there's anything.
That's going to be on your tombstone. That's going to be like, that sums you up in one sentence.
I hope so. I hope so. It's not experience. It's not your background. It's not your skill. It's not your network. It's not your connections. It's just sheer will and determination. If you really want to get after it, you can get after it. And so, I don't want to get on a hype train because I can get on my soapbox on that topic, but I love that.
Well, and I think too, something that I observed was, even though I would imagine I wasn't part of the team when it was February and March of 2020, and you guys were like, holy crap, like this is the worst. But what turned out was it actually created a void where a lot of organizations were like, we need Leadr because our whole world has changed and we're not set up for this, right?
It really was the greatest blessing in disguise. What COVID highlighted for a lot of people is the disconnects that exist in our team. And we felt like we were connected closer than we were because we had this opportunity to see each other every day. But when that coffee, that hallway conversation is taken away, what are you left with? And that's when all of the toxicity, maybe that's too dramatic, but that's when all of the bad stuff surfaces. It comes to the surface and people realize we had gaps in our communication strategy. We had gaps in our investment into people. We had gaps in how we rolled out change. And so Leadr helped to fill a lot of those gaps. And I think that worked in our favor. Yeah,
for sure. Yeah. I mean, definitely, because I feel like how else would we have been able to, because really what we're helping organizations do is change. It's organizational change. It's people development. And that's really hard. And COVID just brought to light a lot of the places where leaders and organizations weren't doing that as well as they thought they were, which is key.
It's true. And changes are hard, especially if you work with Matt and Holly, because we just want to change everything all at once and keep moving without telling anybody. And so Leadr has helped you and I be clearer at, okay, so this is why we're changing. This is when it's changing. This is who's involved, as opposed to just, we're changing, follow me, we're going up the hill.
Yep, here we go. Yes, absolutely. So true. So what's next? We hit a big goal for the team was 300 customers, and now we're well on our way to almost 350. So,
Yes.
I mean, when you joined, think about, Chris called you on the middle of your break.
Yeah.
And then now you get to think 5 years ahead. Like, what does that look like for Leadr?
So the North Pole for us, the North Star is 1 million liters developed. And so we're at about 5,000, which 5,000 is incredible because it's 5,000 more than we had this time last year, but it's still a very, very, very small percentage of a million. Yeah. So it's like there's a fine balance between resting on your laurels and being really proud of your accomplishments, and then also realizing you barely scratched the surface of what we can do. So right now, our goal is to double in 4 months. So we did 0 to 300 customers in 12 months. We believe we can double that again in the next 3 to 4 months, while maintaining our level of excellence with support and service and product and all of that. And then beyond that, it's how do we make incremental steps towards the 1 million goal. So that's the plan. Yeah.
And we just closed our Series A.
Literally this morning.
You ever imagine that you would be a CEO of a company where you would lead a round of your Series A?
No. I always thought I'd just be the follower, the operator. Like, you just tell me what to do and where to go. I never thought I'd be the one, getting the actual round closed and seeing that all come to fruition.
Yeah. What do you feel like was the biggest thing you learned through that process?
Okay. Category creation. I don't know if people know that term, but the term of creating something out of nothing, creating a category that doesn't already exist. So if you talk about Leadr as people development software, no one's going to go, oh, people development software, like those other 7 tools that I use. It's the very first of its kind, in a sense. And so this whole process has taught me how to be really clear and articulate in what we do and why we do it, because it doesn't exist and there's no comparable. And so if you're not able to have a very short 30-second elevator pitch of your why, everything else kind of crumbles and falls apart because you just confuse people. So that's probably been the biggest one, of me articulating and finding the most clear ways of talking about the why.
Yeah. Because when you're going through a round like that, I mean, how many times did you have to say what we do? 1 million?
Oh, a lot. Yeah. Many times. And, the sort of folks that we were engaging with, they have such busy schedules. We were doing 15-minute call slots. So you have to be super snappy and on it. And so it helped me because I love to talk. And so it's easy for me to just keep talking. And that was actually a detriment to the conversation.
Yeah. Oh, it's so hard. Why is this Series A such a big deal for Leadr?
So, any startup, the biggest challenge is always how can you fuel the mission? And especially if you're growing quickly and you want to bring in more developers, or you want to bring in more sales and marketing resources, or you want to bring in more customer success people, you just need resources. And so we want what's the saying? Our appetite is greater than our stomach. What's the phrase?
Yes, that's the phrase.
Something like that. Like we're hungrier more than our appetite can support, or something along those lines. So we always want more, which means we just need more to fuel that. And so this is about us. How can we accelerate and achieve the double in 4 months and then the triple in 12?
Yeah, to 1 million liters.
1 million liters, exactly.
Well, I feel like I could have so many more conversations with you, Matt. This is just the beginning, but thanks for bringing me onto the team. This has been such an incredible journey so far, and it's only been, 6 months?
I know. It feels like 6 years almost.
It really does. In a good way.
In a good way. Yeah. In a very good way.
But this team is really why I joined, was to be able to be a part of being able to work with you and Chris and the whole team every day. It really is just such a joy. And so, thanks for bringing me on the team and for sharing Leadr's story with everybody today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.